The Santa Fe Trail was a southwestern trade route first opened by Spanish settlers in the late 18th century. Until the railroad arrived in 1880, this vital pathway transported cattle and other goods between the towns of Franklin in central Missouri and Santa Fe, New Mexico, supporting a vast trade network between Mexico, the Republic of Texas, and the United States. Many settlers in southeastern Colorado relied on this trade route, and even today, the geography of the area is defined by what was once a dirt track running through the scrubland and desert. Steve and Joy Wooten are direct descendants of homesteaders along the Santa Fe Trail.
Well, my great-grandfather immigrated from Ireland in about 1860, and he was crippled. And through Ellis Island, they wouldn't let any sick people or injured people come through. And in order for him to get into the United States, he came through Mexico. And he met Annie Cassidy when they were married there. They set up home in Folsom and then opened a mercantile exchange. And so they supplied ranching and farming and wholesale goods out of that. And through Ellis Island, they wouldn't let
Folsom also, and so he diversified way back when it wasn't popular.
He began to travel extensively, taking contracts for wool, goat, and beef. He was going clear down into southern New Mexico, Texas, Kansas, and then he also got in the beef business. When that became the industry of the plains, he was probably gone 2/3 of his time. They tell us stories that he'd fall asleep and the horse would come into the headquarters and he'd still be asleep in the buggy. They'd made that route so many times, and that horse knew how to get home, and he'd bring Papa Joe home.
Kit Carson was the kind of Renaissance man that only seems possible in the West. A trapper and mountain man, he became a legend as an explorer of the young country, an Indian agent, and a veteran of the Indian Wars, the Mexican-American War, and even the Civil War. Dime store novels of the period immortalized Carson with exaggerated tales of daring and elevated him to a symbol for the rugged West. Eventually, Kit Carson settled in Bent County, Colorado, as the Santa Fe Trail was being overtaken by the railroad. His great-grandson, John Carson, still lives in the area to this day.
My Grandpa Charles was the youngest boy of descendants of Kit. You know, we knew it, we were proud of it, but it wasn't something we publicized, I guess you'd say.
No, totally.
Just personally, I ain't done nothing. Like I said, I just got born, so it gives you plenty to read and study and think about.
Through personal research and generational knowledge, John Carson has become an expert in the historical reality of the Santa Fe Trail.
William Becknell didn't invent the Santa Fe Trail. I mean, if you read Pike's Expedition, 17 years before Becknell came out here, he's following Spanish traces, is what he calls them. He's following Spanish wagon ruts, carreta ruts, whatever he was following. So the Spanish been coming up here, trading on exploring expeditions, and the Spanish are following Indian trails. Indians are following animal trails. Animals are going to what they need, grass and water.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's been used for who knows how long.
Right.
Again, Steve and Joy Wooten.
By the late 20s, and the drought had hit and the economic depression had hit, in order to settle their debts with the bank and the mercantile, they turned title over to the exchange.
Dad and my uncle and grandpa always talked about, how did you get through the Depression? The Dust Bowl was, we sold every head of cattle we had so we could keep the land. We could always buy more cattle, but we knew there wasn't more land.
Lots of people were broke and left their homesteads, and so he acquired tracts of land through that method too.
I can remember growing up, Dad, that was always The land is your heritage. That is your future. That is your inheritance. And the land was everything.
When he died, he left enough land for all 7 of his children to have a ranch. He had an amount of land that was larger than Ireland that he left when he passed away.
If we're talking about the American U.S. involvement in the Santa Fe Trail, folks would meet up until there was a party big enough to be safe. And of course that depends on the year. They'd pick the leaders they were going to have, their captains and the lieutenants and so forth for that group. And they'd make the rules they were going to follow. It's a very fluid thing, just like the trail itself. It's a ribbon, it's not a road. It's going to move around. It depends, If you're the first person down the trail, you can basically take your pick.
Right.
There's numerous places to cross the river. There's good, and there's bad, there's easy, there's hard. The captain's going to make the final decision of whoever they elected. But water and grass are going to be the big determinant factors.
Right.
Is there enough or is there too much? If you didn't have wagon trouble, you didn't get bogged down crossing a river or a stream, you're looking at 15, 18 miles a day out on the flats, You get to Raton, and that's of course going to be 8, 9, whatever, 100 yards.
Right.
They talk about having to rope wagons and oxen down off of cliffs going over Raton Pass, that kind of thing. So you had to be a tough old bird, that's for dang sure.
If you could trade your life ranching now for a time before, would you do it?
I honestly don't know if I'm tough enough. It might be interesting if you could put yourself back in open range, but it's way tougher than the movies make it sound. Most homesteaders in the 1800s, every one of them had some element of frostbite, lost some limbs. We had no antibiotics. You take freezing and extreme heat and drought and everything else is just an everyday occurrence in life. It's an incredibly tough lifestyle, and I don't think we really can appreciate what those people went through.